The moment Judge Douglas Harrington dismissed Samuel Bennett's case without a second glance, he sealed the fate of every corrupt power broker in Baltimore. They thought they saw the whole story. A defeated 75-year-old black man, another elderly holdout forced off land his family had owned since Reconstruction. Just one more victory in their decades-long campaign to erase generations of black wealth through perfectly legal theft. What they never saw was Grace Bennett's final masterpiece, orchestrated from her deathbed 18 months earlier. Every dismissed case, every forged document, every bribed official, all carefully documented in her precise handwriting. They never understood that her quiet husband, standing before them with her photograph clutched to his chest, wasn't there to beg for justice. He was there to spring the trap that would expose their entire corrupt empire. Grace Bennett died fighting cancer, but she left behind a weapon more powerful than any corporate lawyer or crooked judge: the truth, preserved by love, protected by patience, and about to be wielded by those they'd underestimated for far too long. Sometimes the most devastating battles are won in whispers, and Baltimore's most powerful men are about to learn why Grace Bennett's name will echo long after their empires crumble to dust. Just before we get back to it, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. And if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow's special episode is one you definitely don't want to miss. The wooden bench creaked beneath Samuel Bennett as he shifted his weight, trying to find comfort in the unforgiving courthouse seat. His weathered hands trembled slightly as they held the silver-framed photograph of Grace, his beloved wife of 50 years. The image captured her radiant smile from their last anniversary together before cancer took her away 18 months ago. "Give me strength, Grace," he whispered, his voice barely audible above the rustling papers and quiet murmurs filling courtroom 307. "Just like you always did." At 75, Samuel's tall frame had begun to bow under the weight of years and worries, but his eyes remained sharp and clear behind wire-rimmed glasses. He wore his best suit, navy blue, pressed the night before, and a tie Grace had given him years ago. His white hair was neatly combed, and his worn shoes were polished to a shine. Even now, he believed in presenting himself with dignity, just as his parents had taught him. The courthouse buzzed with activity around him. Lawyers in expensive suits hurried past, briefcases swinging. Court officers directed traffic through security checkpoints, and the click-clack of heels echoed off the marble floors. Among the crowd, a young woman with a reporter's notebook caught Samuel's eye. She seemed different from the others, watching the proceedings with genuine interest rather than detached professionalism. Amelia Hart adjusted her press badge and settled into her seat, pen poised above her notebook. At 28, she was one of the youngest reporters covering the courthouse beat, and unlike many of her colleagues who chased sensational stories, she found herself drawn to the quieter cases, the ones that revealed the true character of justice in America. "All rise," the bailiff's voice boomed through the courtroom, the Honorable Judge Douglas Harrington presiding. Judge Harrington swept into the courtroom, his black robes billowing behind him. He was a man in his early 60s, with steel gray hair and cold blue eyes that seemed to dismiss people before they even spoke. He settled into his chair with the confidence of someone who knew his word was law within these walls. "Bennett versus Chesapeake Development Corporation," the clerk announced. "Civil case number 2025 CV 4789. Samuel rose slowly, his joints protesting the movement. The young public defender beside him, fresh out of law school and already overwhelmed with cases, shuffled through his papers nervously. "Your Honor," the public defender began, "Mr. Bennett is here today to present evidence regarding the wrongful foreclosure of his family's property." "Approach the podium, Mr. Bennett," Judge Harrington interrupted, barely glancing at the file before him. Samuel made his way forward, still clutching Grace's photograph. The walk felt longer than it should have, each step echoing in his ears. He could feel the weight of the courthouse's indifference pressing down on him. "Your Honor," Samuel began, his voice steady despite his nerves. "My family has worked that land for generations. My great-grandfather, a freed slave, purchased those 40 acres in 1867. He paid for every inch with money he earned through his own sweat and determination. The judge's expression remained impassive, but Samuel continued, drawing strength from Grace's image. "We have the original deed. Your Honor, my wife, Grace. She kept all our family papers organized." "Mr. Bennett." Judge Harrington cut in, a hint of condescension in his tone. "Are you aware that property tax laws have changed significantly since 1867? "Yes, Your Honor. But the taxes were paid. We have receipts." Outdated documents from a different era hardly constitute relevant evidence in a modern court proceeding. The judge's voice dripped with dismissal. "The current deed and tax records clearly show." "But, sir, those records were falsified." Samuel's voice rose slightly, earning a sharp look from the judge. "If you'll just look at the documentation my wife saved." "Mr. Bennett." Judge Harrington's tone could have frozen water. "This court's time is valuable. The foreclosure was legally executed according to current statutes. Your historical grievances, while unfortunate, have no bearing on the present situation." Amelia's pen moved furiously across her notebook, capturing every word, every dismissive gesture. Her jaw clenched as she watched the scene unfold. In the gallery, whispers began to circulate. "These people always want handouts," one woman muttered to her companion. "Wasting everyone's time with ancient history," another added, not bothering to lower his voice. Samuel stood straight, dignity intact despite the murmurs. "Your Honor, please. That land represents everything my family built. My wife, Grace, before she passed, she made me promise." Case dismissed. Judge Harrington's gavel crashed down with finality. "Bailiff, please ensure Mr. Bennett is escorted out if he continues to disturb the court's proceedings." The young public defender slumped in defeat, already reaching for his next case file. Samuel remained at the podium for a moment, the weight of generations of hopes and dreams crashing down around him. As he turned to leave, the crowd parted around him like water around a stone, eyes averted, no one willing to acknowledge the injustice they had just witnessed. Amelia Hart watched him go, her hand trembling slightly as she wrote her final notes. Outside the courthouse, the autumn air carried a bitter chill. Samuel sat heavily on a stone bench, still holding Grace's photograph like a lifeline. "Grandpa," a gentle voice broke through his thoughts. Andre Bennett, Samuel's grandson, hurried up the courthouse steps. At 24, Andre was the image of his father at that age, tall and lean, with intelligent eyes and a quiet confidence. He wore dark jeans and a simple button-down shirt, his laptop bag slung over one shoulder. "I got here as fast as I could," Andre said, sitting beside his grandfather. "Traffic was terrible." "What happened?" Samuel shook his head slowly. "Judge wouldn't even look at the evidence. Son, didn't want to hear about the receipts. The original deed, nothing." His voice caught. "All those papers your grandmother kept safe all these years might as well have been blank." Andre placed a hand on his grandfather's shoulder. "This isn't over, Grandpa. We'll find another way. I know some people who understand computers. Records. There has to be something we can do." But Samuel barely seemed to hear him, his eyes fixed on Grace's photograph, on her gentle smile that had always given him strength. Now, for the first time, looking at her face brought only pain, the pain of a promise he couldn't keep.